Wanted to talk to you today. This is my third time trying to record this video, if you can believe it. But I wanted to talk to you today about complexity. I wanted to talk to you about why you need to read big, old, large, complex works of literature. And it is not so that you can say that I have, I read this book and that book and that book, so you can sort of, uh, check off all of the great classic works. That's not really the point. And the point, of course, is also not information. It's not, you don't read the Odyssey so that you can get information on, I don't know, how to get home. You do not read Paradise Lost so that you can get a kind of blow by blow over what really happened. It's really not the point. The point of reading these big complex works, the reason why we should do this is because it invites us into a kind of complexity that we would otherwise not experience. And all too often, we want to distill this process, teaching and learning, as if it is sort of a mere transferal of information, right? That it is sort of this data move, and it's really not. Okay, my sophomores, we just got finished today. We're having class today on the last book, book 12 of Paradise Lost, and I'm really proud of what they have accomplished because I would put this in kind of those, I don't know, top two, three, five at least, most difficult things to read in the English language when it comes to stories. The language is complex. It's as if Milton's first language was not really English, but it was Latin and Greek. Um, and but that's okay. And It's a really hard thing for it to do. And I have now taught it for the 17th time. This is my 17th time reading it with my students. And I do reread it with my students each year. And what I have found is I am only now just getting to the point where I feel pretty confident with Paradise Lost. I look back to my first year of teaching it here, and I think to myself, I was maybe 25 to 30 seconds ahead of my students. Um, but teaching it over the years has revealed to me that the complexity is the point. And this is what I mean by it. Right? That if you can summon the powers of attention to pay attention to a book and to really stick with it, it's a kind of superpower. You know, why do you do these hard things? Well, we know intuitively why we do hard things, because when we do hard things, we not only gain a sense of accomplishment, which is real. And I think that's one of the main things that I want to convey to my students. And I'm going to do that in just a minute here, that they should be proud of themselves. They should be proud that they were able to kind of do something that a lot of people don't think they can do, frankly. I am witness to the contrary. They absolutely can do great things. And we grossly underestimate what we are capable of doing, and we grossly underestimate what we think our kids, what our students can do. And I think they kind of know it. I think they know it when they get patronized. But anyway, that's not my point today. My point is that by inviting yourself into this work, not so much as to gain a kind of series of bullet points of things that happen, but rather it is the experience itself of having to keep track of something this complex. That is an invitation into complexity, um, into experience in a way that you can't do in any other capacity. Like, you can't fake it. Yeah, sure, I can go and spark notes my way through it, and I can probably, scratch out a 65%. I can, if I'm not a particularly scrupulous person, I can also find other ways to pass a class. But what all of that does is it outsources your own authority. It outsources your capacities to something else, whether it is to an AI or whether to it is some other authority that's going to just simply tell you what's going on. Now, remember, I do not expect that my students, upon reading Paradise Lost for the first time, to have any sense of mastery over it as such. It's not about that. It's not about now my kids can say they are masters of Paradise Lost. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. There are very few books that I can somewhat say that about myself. Like I feel really confident in, let's say, Macbeth. I read it a bunch of times, I've taught it a bunch of times, and I feel like I really see the inner workings of that complex Shakespeare play. But that's not really the point. The point first is experience, right? The next point is to have that sense that you can master your attention enough that you can pay attention to something that is difficult and not immediately pleasurable. It should be pointed out, that when you read a big complex work, there are going to be large moments where it's not pleasant exactly. That does come later on, and you're going to have your moments. And one of the things that I hope to do in class is to sort of read some passages out loud and to sort of demonstrate a particularly beautiful line or a particularly complex line. I mean, that can be really illuminating and an experience for the students, right? But to invite them into this world in which they can take ownership over themselves, that they can broaden themselves, deepen themselves, extend themselves, and that's another thing that is worth pointing out. But all too often, we are left with this notion that these complex things are frankly a waste of our time, and I see these sort of things quite a bit. Um, but we don't read the great works. We don't go through the time, the effort, the toil at times, um, because we haven't figured out a faster way to do it. That's very frustrating to me when I hear people say this. And you need to have um, a school, a teacher who's going to make you do hard things and find a way to get you to do it, because our destined depth and complexity, our destined breadth is not a given. It is something that we actually have to accomplish. It is sometimes as difficult and as frustrating as Odysseus trying to get home, right? But when you work your way, for instance, through a kind of complexity, you all of a sudden realize that there are whole horizons of things that, if left to your own devices, you'll never encounter. So, like, for instance, we were going through, like, when Adam finds out that his bride uh, has given into the temptation of the serpent and has eaten the fruit, he's not sold by the argument, right? He knows that it's stupid to eat the fruit, but the reason that he does it is because he cannot imagine living without his bride, without his wife Eve, and so uh, the temptation there is one of an impoverished imagination. He simply cannot imagine what life could be like without his beloved, which makes a lot of sense because remember, Eve is the creature that God creates through collaboration with Adam. This is sort of the first smash up collab, I guess. But the idea here is that she is truly that amazing, and so to imagine life without her is just simply not possible. And then we go back to Eve, and well, why does she eat the fruit? Uh, it's not exactly that she buys an argument per se, but imagine the phenomena. You're walking through the garden and you encounter this serpent, a serpent that you've seen on several other occasions. This is not a new thing, but all of a sudden the serpent starts speaking to you and flattering you. He says, "Oh, Eve, you wouldn't believe what has happened to me. I ate this fruit, and my whole life sprung into existence. This whole depth, and I immediately came to you to see you because you're amazing." And you can see the way the flattery works, but it's also Eve is dealing with a novel experience and she doesn't have anywhere to put it because she's never seen this before. So when he says, "Look, I used to be this dumb animal. Now I've eaten this fruit and now I'm amazing. What would it do to you? I didn't die. Look what would it possibly do to you?" And so you can kind of see yourself like, "Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, look, I mean, clearly this is what's happened in front. Now, the problem, of course, is that hovering in all the background is the fact that the serpent is actually lying. He did not eat the fruit. This is not why the serpent can speak to Eve. This is Lucifer, this is Satan inside of the serpent, using him as a skin suit, as we say, right? And using, capturing Eve's imagination in such a way to bring about his own nefarious ends. Right. So just right there, these sort of levels of complexity that Milton is engaging with and showing us and making us go through is that it is a mechanism by which you can see the way in which our own seeing can be used against us. And so this kind of conversation, like the one we're having right now, like you can't get that on Chat GPT, right? You can't. You have to sort of be walked through something that you yourself have to do as a reader, as a student, as a teacher, right? And so mastery is not control of all the facts. Mastery that I'm trying to convey, the kind of mastery that you get when you engage in this kind of complex work, is uh, the mastery of your own attention, the mastery of your own imagination. So we read big books, complex books, because it's an invitation into complexity. And if we don't do that, we become simplified, we become flattened, and we become prone to having our to be captured, right? To selling our souls, so to speak. It doesn't have to be a dramatic thing that happens in a story. It can be simply the letting go of any sense of personal agency. So please hit the like and subscribe button if you like it. I appreciate your time and attention. I do my best not to waste it. I do my best not to bore you. And if you do like these, let me know what complex books you want to read. Either you don't have to be doesn't have to be epic poems. It could be novels, Crime and Punishment, and The Sun Also Rises, and A Light in August, and any number of these great novels. But by engaging in complex attentional activity, you open yourself up to levels of depth and breadth that you would otherwise not have. So do that. Be well, my friends. Cheers and God bless.